Welcome at Pizza and More. You maybe know there are two different versions, let's say three different versions of the Neapolitan pizza. I'm Jürgen and we make this time the Pizza Napoletana Contemporanea, which means this is the young, the modern version of the Neapolitan pizza. If you maybe, the other two versions we have from a Neapolitan pizza, there is the pizza fritta and there is the traditional pizza napoletana. These both, if you maybe follow my videos, then you maybe know it. These two versions, these two other versions are definitely ruled by a policy from the AVPN, so from the Associazione Verace Pizza Napoletana. These are some pizzaiolos in Naples who came together and made a big rule set which tells us how a Neapolitan pizza has to look like. There are rules like which kind of flour do we have to use, how long is the leavening time, maximum and minimum, what's the maximum or minimum hydration, how do the toppings look like, where do the toppings come from, what kind of salt do we need, how does the oven should look like? How is the fire in the oven? What temperature do we have in the oven? And. So there is a big rule set. The Neapolitana Contemporanea is here far more relaxed. We have here lots of room for our own ideas. We can play with the dough. There are pre-doughs available, so we can make a poolish, we can make BIGA, or we could do autolysis if we want. We can let the dough race for 48, for 72 hours, how long ever we want. We can play around with the hydration. So hydrations from the Pizza Contemporanea are very often over 70%. Also the toppings, we can really play here with our taste, with common taste, what fits together, what doesn't fit together. We can really, we have here lots of freedom on this kind of pizza. And also the shape is a different one. You may know the traditional Neapolitan pizza, so also the rule set says the crust of the Neapolitan pizza has 1 to 2 centimeters. On the Contemporanea we are free, and maybe you saw it already, there are lots of thick crusts for the Contemporanea with lots of air inside. So also here we can play and we can show big crusts. So for example, in this picture at the top, you can see the traditional Pizza Napoletana, and on this picture at the bottom, you can see the Contemporanea. I decided as well to make this time a BIGA with you. So the pre-dough BIGA, the Italian version of a pre-dough, we make 50% BIGA. We let the BIGA raise at room temperature for 24 hours and then the main dough in the fridge also for 24 hours. So a total leavening time of 48 hours. The hydration we want to make will be 70%. If you maybe know me, you will think, okay, if he uses a pre-dough, then he will use two different versions of flour. This is correct. For the pre-dough, I will use a 00 flour with 14% protein, which is a flour with a high baking strength. So this flour will have a W value of 340 to 360. And for the main dough, I use then as well a type 00 flour, but with 13% of protein and a W value of 290 to 310. The reason why I use here two different versions of flour is because if I would use this flour with the medium baking strength already in the pre-dough, there could be the possibility that at the end the gluten structure is not anymore strong enough. The gluten structure breaks, we have problems when stretching the pizza. Also the gas will not be kept in the crust because the gluten structure is already too weak, and there is the possibility then as well that we have only a flat crust at the end. And now I would say we start directly with the BIGA. Here we have the ingredients for our BIGA. By the way, it's not necessary to pencil anything down because the whole recipe, the whole procedure is in the video description as in each other video as well. I have here 250 grams of 00 flour. Then I have 125 grams cold water. And I have here 0.6 grams of dry yeast. And if you want to use fresh yeast, please use 1.8 grams. The first I do now to create the BIGA is that I dissolve the yeast in my water. Normally you may know the dry yeast comes directly to the flour. But as we do now not knead the dough, we only shake the dough, there might be the possibility that the yeast will not be distributed properly in the flour, and that's the reason why I dissolve the yeast beforehand. Then we use a container, a box or a bowl or whatever, and we pour the flour into it. Then we already distribute the flour a bit, and then we take our water with yeast and we pour the water with yeast to the flour. And now we start shaking our water together with the flour until most of the loose flour is taken over by the dough pieces. And then if you have no progress anymore with shaking, so the result is, or the aim should be, no homogeneous dough. The aim should be lots of small dough balls. Yeah, if there is no progress anymore, we could use also a spatula and release everything which sticks actually to the side of the box, and of course everything which sticks to the bottom. And then we can use the spatula always to turn or to flip the BIGA around. And we do this now really until we have almost no loose flour anymore. And then if it's done, we take a box or a container and we fill the BIGA into this box or container. If this is in the container, it's important to close the lid. And then for the BIGA, we don't close the box totally airtight. If you have the possibility like my box here, then let it a bit open. If you don't have such a thing, then don't close the lid totally. Let it a bit open. Or if you close it with a plastic wrap, then put some holes into the plastic wrap. And now we let rest or raise the BIGA at room temperature for 24 hours. My BIGA had now a leavening time of 24 hours at room temperature. My room temperature is around 23-24 degrees, maybe overnight a bit less. I would strongly recommend to make the main dough from BIGA with a dough machine or with any other mixer, because it might be very hard to create the dough from BIGA by hand. This is totally different than a poolish or a direct dough, which is really easy to produce by hand. The BIGA is really very difficult. However, you could try it. This gives definitely strong forearm muscles. And now I would say we start with the dough. The ingredients we need for the main dough is our BIGA, then 250 grams of flour. As I already said, this is a type 00 flour with a medium baking strength and 13% protein. Then I have 225 grams of very cold water, 15 grams of fine sea salt, and 0.5 grams of dry yeast, and if you want to use fresh yeast, then please use 1.5 grams. Making the dough with a BIGA is quite different than a direct dough or a dough with a poolish. We add now all our BIGA. It's possible to cut or to tear also the BIGA into pieces, but I think it is not really required. You can put it in one piece. Then we add the flour, the yeast, and now half amount of the water. And then we start mixing at a low speed for, let's say around 2 to 3 minutes until everything is good together. And then we start adding the remaining water in very little steps. Little step by little step. You have to be here very patient. It takes time, but this is very important. Otherwise, it will be very hard that the dough gets all the water. So really, absolutely in very little steps. Then after round about good 5 minutes of kneading time, we add the salt. This is not necessary that already all the water is in, but now we add the salt. And then after 10 portions or so, it's time to add the last portion of water. And then we can also increase the kneading speed to a medium speed. And now we continue kneading until the window test works. You may think the dough is far too wet and it will never work with this dough. I can promise you, then you were not patient enough and you did not knead long enough. It will take its time. It will take 20 minutes. It will take maybe 25 minutes. I don't know. I have not watched onto the clock. But it takes its time until the dough gets released from the bottom of the bowl. But at some point it releases, and then you can do the window test and you will see the gluten structure is then built properly. It simply takes time. If you remove the dough too early, however, if you make the window test and the window test works, the dough is ready. But if the window test doesn't work and you remove the dough, it can be the case that the gluten structure is simply not built enough and not strong enough, and then you have issues and problems with your dough. So be patient enough and try after kneading to make the window test. For this window test I already covered my hands with water. You could also use olive oil to prevent a bit the dough from sticking to your hands. Then I have here a piece of dough. I put it already out and then I stretch this piece of dough. And of course, yes, it's sticky. It has 70% protein, 70% hydration. But you can see the gluten structure is built properly. I'm able to make the window test. It's great. And now I take the dough out of the machine onto my counter. Now it's important to shape a proper dough ball. And also we make now several times stretch and fold. This helps us to make the dough stopping with this stickiness. For making stretch and fold, we take the dough from the left and from the right. If the dough sticks too heavily, we could also cover the hands with olive oil. We take the dough from the left and from the right, we lift it up, put it back, stretch it and fold it. And now we do this several times. And then you will directly feel how the structure of the dough gets strengthened. And you will also feel that the dough stops sticking. And if you have done this now several times, you could do now different versions. You could use such a spatula, and then you go always with the spatula under your dough and you turn your dough. Or you also could do it with your hands. You go with the little fingers always under the dough. You turn it a bit. You go under and you pull the dough. It's important not to roll the dough, only pulling it. And so we get a nice dough ball. And then we take our dough ball box. We take the dough, put it into this box. We close the lid and we let now the dough rest at room temperature for 1 to 2 hours. And then we put it into the fridge for 12 hours. The dough was now for around about 10 hours in the fridge. By the way, my fridge has 4 degrees Celsius. And we go now from the bulk fermentation to the ball fermentation. If you may have mozzarella which is in this salty water, then please remove the mozzarella right now out of this water and then cut it into slices. Traditionally, mozzarella is cut into slices and fior di latte is cut into sticks like French fries. Then put the mozzarella into a sieve and put it back into the fridge. Through this, all the liquid which is inside of the mozzarella can drain out of the cheese, and afterwards when we bake then the pizza, we don't have a soggy pizza because all the liquid goes already out into a bowl and stays not in the cheese and doesn't come then onto our pizza. I took the dough now already out of the box. You can see the dough rose fantastically. It's a really great result. And now I make 3 identical dough balls. These dough balls have now the same weight. For making the dough balls and the dough sticks too heavily to your hands, then please use olive oil. And for the first one I want to show you, maybe it sticks really too heavy for you. Then you could do the same like we did with the big dough ball. We do the so-called stretch and fold. This means we lift our piece of dough, we put it back onto the counter, we stretch it and we fold it over. And we do this several times, and then you see here as well with this little dough ball that the dough stops sticking. Okay, I have here some dough on my fingers, but this is from earlier. And now we turn this dough as well. We pull the dough. We go with the fingers under to stretch the surface. If you have already thick air bubbles, you can open them easily. And then, if the surface is nice and strong, you can see it stopped sticking. Then we have to have a look that the bottom is closed properly. This prevents the dough afterwards in the box from running flat, if the dough has enough space in the box. And then we put it back into this box. The most preferred way I do normally with shaping the dough balls is that you take one piece of dough and I stretch it always from the side and push it into the center. And some other versions how to make dough balls is already visible in some other videos. I explained it already several times and I showed it. So only 2 quick ones. And then if the surface is nice and strong, also here we have to guarantee that the bottom is closed. And then the pizza ball is ready and comes back into the box. The 3 pizza balls are back in the box, and then I close the lid, and I think so they come directly back into the fridge right now. I think 2 hours before baking I take them out of the fridge. We have actually here in the kitchen around about 25 degrees, which means I think 1 or 2 hours before baking I take them out. This depends always on the room temperature. The warmer, the shorter the time should be. If you have only 22 degrees maybe in your kitchen or in the room where you take it out, then also I would recommend to take them out 4 to 6 hours before baking. And once again, everything is already prepared to make a nice pizza. I have everything here to make a nice pizza margherita. Of course, the Contemporanea is a modern, a young version of a Neapolitan pizza, which means we can also play with the toppings. But I think I make now a margherita so that we have the possibility to compare it to all the other pizza versions. And of course, the margherita is a perfect base for any other topping or for lots of other toppings. Mushrooms, salami, salsiccia, ham, whatever you want, you can add the margherita as a very good basement. And now we start directly with our pizza. And also here, by the way, you can see here the dough balls, how fantastic they roast. It's really great. And now it's absolutely important to use enough semolina. Otherwise, if the dough sticks somewhere, then we will have really issues. It's important to release the dough from the side. We release the dough everywhere where it's attached to a different dough ball or to another dough ball. Then we go with the spatula under, and then we lift the dough out and we put it directly into semolina. Now it's very important to close the lid of the box to protect the remaining dough balls from drying out. And then we do it exactly the same like we do it with each other Neapolitan pizza as well. We flip the dough several times in the semolina, then we take it out and we press all the air from the center towards the crust. If you have directly such very thick bubbles, then you can open them, otherwise they will burn in the oven. The difference to a normal Neapolitan pizza is we left round about 2 to 3 centimeters crust over, and of course we don't press the crust. The tomato sauce I made is a normal traditional Neapolitan tomato sauce, which means this is San Marzano tomatoes and salt. I tear the San Marzano tomatoes by hand, and then I added for 100 grams of tomatoes 1 gram of fine sea salt. Of course, if you want to have any different tomato sauce with which herbs ever, do what you want, do what you like. This is the main important thing, that it tastes yourself. Then the next is some fresh grated Parmesan cheese. Then of course some fresh basil. As next the mozzarella fior di latte. Then some olive oil. And the pizza is already ready for the peel. I put some semolina onto the peel. I lift the dough, push the peel under, and then I stretch the pizza to its final size. And the pizza is ready for the oven. Here comes the pizza now out of the oven, and you see this wonderful thick crust. However, it lost a bit its round shape, but okay, this could happen, but I can guarantee this will not impact the taste. And then we will add some fresh basil, and I definitely will show you the air which is inside of this fantastic outside crispy and inside soft crust. And you can really see how full of air this crust is. It's amazing. And now I have the pleasure to taste this nice and fantastic pizza. I cut out a piece and at first I taste the center. And you can believe me, this center tastes really great, but what should I say? I love pizza. I like making pizza. It's really absolutely a super nice thing to make pizza. And now I taste the crust. And also this crust tastes so fantastic. The whole pizza is really fantastic. The crust is full of air. It has a pretty nice taste. This comes from the BIGA, of course. And what should I say? This is such a fantastic pizza. Please, please try and make it as well. Yeah, if you like my video, it would be fantastic if you would subscribe my channel. Then we see us in the next video. Ciao.